This is the ultimate way to play Game Boy Advance games. In a time where buying a complete in-box Game Boy Advance game can cost you over $100, and having to carry all your loose cartridges in a separate bag isn't the most ideal way to travel with a gaming console, the best way to go about this is to buy yourself a modded Game Boy Advance. This is what a normal Game Boy Advance looks like when it's turned on. The screen is barely visible, and ideally you'd probably want to play this outside where there's a lot more light from the sun. The modded Game Boy Advance gets rid of this problem entirely. With an upgraded backlit IPS screen, you can literally play this thing anywhere. Honestly, look how bright this thing is. This is like one of the lowest levels I can actually use my camera to show it, but I mean, just check out how bright this thing gets. On top of that, there's different color modes you can use for this guy as well, and you can also change the way that the display looks. But here is where this guy gets interesting. Like I mentioned before, if you were to play any Game Boy Advance game you'd want, you'd have to carry them all in like a separate pouch if you were going to be traveling with it. But I get rid of that problem entirely, because buying this one Game Boy Advance cartridge is all you need to play any Game Boy Advance game you want. This is the Easy Flash Omega, which I've loaded with an SD card of all the games that I legally own. Pairing this guy up with the modded Game Boy Advance that I have literally leads to the best possible outcome when it comes to playing Game Boy Advance games. Starting up the console, you can see that it's going to boot into the Easy Flash cartridge. And then I go into all my legally owned ROMs that I've dumped myself and check it out. Any Game Boy Advance game that I've ever wanted to play from my collection is now dumped all into this cartridge without me having to lug around a giant bag filled with my entire Game Boy Advance collection. How do you guys play your Game Boy Advance game? Would you ever consider getting a modded Game Boy Advance? Let me know.